In the previous lesson, we learned how to divide polynomials using long division. In this lesson, we're going to use another type of division called synthetic division. First, let's compare long and synthetic division. Here we have 3x squared minus 11x plus 10 divided by x minus 2. So remember what this process looked like for long division. We have 3x squared minus 11x plus 10 divided by x minus 2. With long division, you look at the first term on the outside and you look at the first term on the inside, and you figure out what you need to multiply times x in order to end up with 3x squared. Well, we know that x times 3x would give us 3x squared, so we put the 3x up top. Every time you put a new number on top, you're going to multiply it around and place it on the second row. So 3x times x is 3x squared, and 3x times negative 2 is negative 6x. Once we've gotten these lined up, we're going to subtract row 1 and row 2. 3x minus 3x is 0, that cancels out. And next we have negative 11 minus negative 6. Negative 11 minus negative 6 would be negative 5x. Then we're going to drop down that 10 and repeat the entire process over again. So again, we're going to look at the first term on the outside, and using this new row, we're going to look at the first term here. So our job is to figure out x times what would give us negative 5x. Well, x times negative 5 would give us a negative 5x, so we place the negative 5 up top. From here, every time you put a new number up top, you're going to multiply it around. So negative 5 times x is negative 5x, and negative 5 times negative 2 is positive 10. Once we've stacked those, again, we're going to subtract. So we're going to subtract row 1 and row 2. Negative 5 minus negative 5 is 0, that cancels out. 10 minus 10 is 0, that cancels out. We have no remainder, so our answer would just be 3x minus 5. Now, long division is a pretty lengthy process. It does take a little while. You see that it takes up quite a bit of space on our paper. Synthetic division is really just going to take the process of long division and synthesize it, make it quick, make it fast, make it easy. So here's what's going to happen. When you set up synthetic division, it's going to look kind of like a reverse long division. I'm going to set up a small box facing the other direction, and I'm going to start by taking the divisor, the number that we're dividing by, and I'm going to set this thing equal to 0. So x minus 2 equals 0. I add 2 on both sides, that gives me x equals 2. That's the number that we're going to put in the box here. So in the box, instead of the x minus 2, it's just a positive 2. Next, I'm going to take the 3x squared minus 11x plus 10, and I am just going to put the coefficients down across this top row here. 3 represents 3x squared. Negative 11 represents negative 11x, and the 10 represents the constant. Now I'm going to skip one row, and I am going to drop down the leading coefficient. So that 3 in front, I'm just going to drop down the 3. Next, I'm going to multiply. I'm going to take the number in the box and I'm going to multiply around here and put my product in the second row. 2 times 3 is 6. I place that in the second row. And now I'm going to add. Negative 11 plus 6 is negative 5. And you're going to repeat that process over again. So every time it's going to be multiply, add, multiply, add. I'm going to go back to my 2, and I'm going to do 2 times negative 5 is negative 10, and I place that in the second row. And again, we're going to add 10 plus negative 10 is 0. We're at the end of the line. I'm going to put a box around that last number. That last number is our remainder. Now, working across that bottom row, the numbers I have down here written in black, those are my answers. I just have to work backwards. So if my remainder is 0, that means the negative 5 is my constant, and the 3 is the one that gets the x. So my answer, again, would just be 3x minus 5. So I get the same answer with in a more efficient way. I don't have to do quite as much work. It doesn't take up quite as much space on the computer. So synthetic division is a nice alternative to long division. It gets you the same answer in a very quick way. The only problem with synthetic division is it doesn't work every single time. It only works if whatever you're dividing by has a single x. If you're dividing by x squared, or you're dividing and there's a coefficient in front of x, such as like a 4x plus 2 or 5x minus 1, then you will have to do long division. So long division works every single time. Synthetic division only works if you're dividing by a single x. Let's take a look at another example. All right, so here we have the steps laid out for us. We have 3x cubed minus 9x squared plus 11x minus 20 divided by x minus 3. Up, I'm going to have a box with my first row. I'm going to skip a row and put a line. This is kind of the structure for synthetic division. I'm going to start by setting the divisor equal to 0 and solving for x. That's the number that's going to go in the box. So I'm going to take x minus 3 equals 0. If I add 3 to both sides, I end up with x equals 3. That's the number that's going to go in the box. Now, across the first row, I'm going to take the coefficients in order from the highest exponent down to the lowest exponent. So here I've got 3, negative 9, 11, and negative 20. The 3 represents 3x cubed. The negative 9 represents negative 9x squared. The 11 represents 11x, and then the negative 20 is the constant. From here, we're going to start the process. We're going to drop down the 3, and then it's multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. So we're going to multiply the number in the box times the number on the bottom row, and we're going to place it in the second row. So that'll be 3 times 3 is 9. Now you add down. Negative 9 plus 9 is 0, and repeat the process. Multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. So again, I'm going to take the 3 times 0 is 0, and then add down. 11 plus 0 is 11. And 3 times 11 is 33. And add down, this was negative 20 plus 33 is 13. There's no numbers left, so that last number is your remainder. When you write your final answer, from the remainder, the next number is the constant. So the 11 is our constant. The next number is x, and then the next number is x squared. So you should always end up with 1 degree less than what your original expression was. So here this would be 3x squared plus 11. We don't have to put the 0x in there. Plus 13 over x minus 3. Let's try one more. All right, we're going to use synthetic division in order to divide 5x to the 4th minus 3x cubed plus 2x squared plus x divided by x plus 1. So we're going to set this thing up. We've got our box over here, and we skip a row and draw a long line because we've got a lot of stuff here that we're going to divide. Continuing to set this thing up, remember you're going to take whatever it is you're dividing by and you're going to set that equal to 0. So x plus 1 equals 0. If I subtract 1, that's going to give me x equals negative 1. That's the number that we're going to put in the box. Now we're going to take the coefficients from our numerator here, and we're going to put them in order from the largest exponent down to the smallest exponent. Remember to put a 0 if a term is missing. So we've got 5, that represents 5x to the 4th. We've got a negative 3 to represent negative 3x to the 3rd power. We've got a 2 to represent 2x squared. And notice there's no x's, so we're going to put a 0 to represent the fact that there are no x's here. And then finally, all right, let's start this. We're going to drop down the leading coefficients. I'm going to bring down that 5, and then remember it's going to be multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add, all the way up. So I'm going to take the number in the box over here, negative 1 times 5 is negative 5, and then I'm going to add straight. Negative 3 plus negative 5 is negative 8. And negative 1 times negative 8 is positive 8. And then we're going to add straight down. 2 plus 8 is 10. And repeat. Negative 1 times 10 is negative 10. And we're going to add straight. 0 plus negative 10 is negative 10. And repeat one last time. Negative 1 times negative 10 is positive 10, and add 7 plus 10 is 17. We got to the end, that's 17, that is our remainder. So as we write our answer, remember to work backwards. The 17 is the remainder, that makes the negative 10 the constant. So that means the 10 gets an x, the negative 8 gets an x squared, and the 5 gets an x cubed. So my final answer would be 5x cubed minus 8x squared plus 10x minus 10, and then my remainder would be 17 over x plus 1 because I was originally dividing by x plus 1. Okay, so yeah, synthetic division is wonderful. It's a very simple and efficient process. No matter how big or how short the problem is, it takes up exactly the same amount of space on your paper. The only problem is that it doesn't work in every single situation. It only works if you're dividing by a linear expression with a coefficient of 1. So if you're just dividing by one single x, that's the only time when synthetic division would be appropriate.